Let's review chapters 2 and 3 in the textbook and talk about groups as systems and group development. So a couple of key concepts you want to think about as we move forward. The whole idea of interconnectedness. You've been part of teams your whole life. Your family is a team. Maybe you're part of a sports or athletic group. Maybe in a classroom, you're part of a team here in this course. So teams have played an important part in your life. You've had sort of ideas about interconnectedness, even though you may not have thought about it too much. So the book talks about the ripple effect. And the pandemic is almost a perfect example of the ripple effect. Think about someone who is not washing their hands, not wearing a mask, and what happens if that person then goes out into public and contaminates or infects someone else. It has a ripple effect throughout society as that person then infects somebody and that person infects somebody else, and it sort of carries on like that. And think about this whole idea of a ripple effect both positively and negatively. Sometimes you're in a group situation and someone comes in with great ideas and things like that, and all of a sudden there's a huge positive ripple effect. So don't look at this as a negative only kind of effect in a group situation. The other idea that talking about interconnectedness is the idea of synergy. You hear that term tossed around a lot, especially in business. It's basically the idea that the sum of the parts is greater than the individual roles within. I used to work as a newspaper, and one of the people there talked about the idea of none of us is as smart as all of us. And working as a group, sometimes you produce greater ideas than if you would have done this individually. So the idea of interconnectedness is really important in a group. Think about this as you put your group together for the projects in this class. So project 1 and project 2 and then the final exam. Think about the environment though within the group. All right, you're going to get your first assignment in week 4 where you're going to have to analyze some form of media. Maybe it's a TV show, maybe it's a movie. And you're going to look at all the group roles and responsibilities. You're going to look at group formation, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. You're going to talk about group as a system in the piece of media that you're going to look at. And you want to have some kind of idea, there's sort of a balance between stability and change. You want to reach that point that is called dynamic equilibrium. Your group can't remain static and never change, but you do want to have some stability in your group. And think about the degree and rate and desirability of that equilibrium. How do you want to sort of achieve that sort of balance between staying the same and having some stability and also reaching out and changing and doing and completing the task? And part of this is going to deal with bad apples. So those people in the group who just don't want to be there, who don't want to participate. We're going to talk about social loafing in a few slides after this. But bad apples, people who just don't want to be in a group. And, you know, I understand working in a group sometimes is a real pain. But this is a small group class. So you're going to have to work in a group for these projects at least 3 times in this course. Right? So think about developing a cooperative climate, figuring out ways to sort of reach out to the bad apples and get them involved at all. Right? There should be a clear code of conduct. Right? I've given you some ground rules, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right? Think about changing communication. If this person doesn't respond to texts or emails, maybe you need to call this person or figure out a way to meet that person face to face. The last two, confronting and separating, are 2 of the sort of extremes. That's the nuclear option. Right? You're not going to be able to kick anybody out of the group in this class because you're all going to get the same grade. But you may need to confront somebody, and sometimes you may need to separate people when it gets a little heated. Hopefully that won't happen. I mean, again, these projects are not life or death. It's just a class. But, think about how you can develop that environment where you can sort of include the bad apples and get them to work productively for you. So group size. Group size, we talk about small groups being 3 people or more. Where does it break down? When you get into 17, 20 people, does that become then a large group? It's really no clear-cut definition at the top end. But small, at the bottom end, it's 3. But think about larger groups. Think about the complexity that develops as you add more and more people to the group. Right? People then don't have to participate as much because they can sort of disappear. So if you think about a classroom with 15 to 20 people in it, there are people who can disappear. If you put them in small groups of 4 or 5, it's really hard for people to disappear. Usually these larger groups also have less satisfaction. You don't feel that your voices are heard. You don't feel that you're actually participating and contributing. So there's usually that idea of less satisfaction. And sometimes it leads to a paralysis where no one can come to any kind of cohesion or kind of consensus on a decision. So you have this sort of paralysis where no one knows what's going to happen. No one's willing to stake out a claim. No one's willing to sort of put their side in on what's going to happen with the group. Smaller groups, there's usually less overt disagreement because there's 4 or 5 people and you want to sort of avoid that kind of disagreement. And there's usually more cooperation. So what's the ideal size of a group? We have the sort of 7 days of the week, the 7 deadly sins, and the rule of 7 in a group. So some people who study groups say once you get past 7, the groups start to break down and become smaller groups. So you think about sports and things like that. So a football team has 11 players, but usually it sort of breaks down. You have sort of the offensive line or the defensive line, then you might have the linebackers on defense, and then you've got the safeties and corners on defense. So you've got basically 11 players, but you've got 3 different groups. And they train together and work together, and usually they have a coach for each of those definite position lines. Right? The other person talked about in the text, talking about if a group gets too big, that you can only 2 pizzas isn't enough, then you have too many people in the group. So again, the book has this sort of amorphous kind of definition that the best size of a group is the smallest group capable of completing the task. It's kind of a no kidding kind of thing, but you think about it, pick the fewest people you need to complete the task. And I think that's going to serve you well. So a group has 2 sort of formats. There's the task and the social group. Both of those need to work together in order to have some kind of synergy, that word we talked about earlier in an earlier slide. Right? So the task is the work performed by the group. So you're going to have 3 tasks in this class where you have to work as a team. First one is to analyze a piece of media and talk about the group roles and responsibilities. Second one is you're going to talk about a group communication issue, and you're going to create either a podcast for adults or a children's book that talks about and tackles some real-world, age-appropriate communication problems that are exhibited in small groups for those particular cohorts, either adults or kids. Right? And the output for these is going to be some kind of report in the first one, where you're going to have to analyze the media and bring on some kind of report, a PowerPoint, Prezi, or some other kind of presentation. Second one is going to be some kind of book or podcast. And the third one is you're going to have to put together some answers to a test, where you're going to analyze the 12 Angry Men movie as a group and sort of look at all the group roles and responsibilities that occur in that film. So that's the output. So that's your task. That's really important. Right? The social aspect is equally as important, because you've got to work together. So you've got to have some kind of social sort of movement in that group to make things work. So the relationship between members needs to be sort of focused on. You may have to spend some time doing that. When we talk about group development in a minute, forming that group, getting those people sort of on board, sort of feeling part of a team is extremely important, because it has a really positive effect on the whole group, or could have a real negative effect on it. You want to achieve some kind of cohesiveness where members feel part of a team, where they feel that they're part of a group and they're being heard, and they have some kind of shared goals. So you do have shared goals. You're in this class, you want to earn a good grade, you want to move on, you want to learn some things about small group communication. Right? Compatible membership, I'm forcing you to work together as a team, so hopefully you have some kind of compatible membership in this, because you're all students. Again, you want to earn a good grade in the class, you want to complete the task. And you have some kind of acceptance of the task. Again, it's kind of an artificial sort of environment we put you in, but you want to accept the task and sort of accept the members of the group to help you complete the task. So Tuckman came up with the idea of group development. Your book mostly talks about the first 4 stages: forming, storming, norming, and performing. There's the 5th one called adjourning. It doesn't quite rhyme, so it doesn't really work into the whole idea. But we're going to talk about these in a little more detail. So as you work through the class and think about the self-critique, one of the things you're going to have to look at is, how did your group develop? And don't think of this as sort of a linear chronological thing, that you move from forming to storming to norming to performing. You're going to bounce back and forth on these. So you may start forming and then jump all the way to norming, and then someone new comes in, or someone misses a meeting or misses some session, and then comes back and you're back to forming again. And then you start sort of fighting between yourselves a little bit and having some conflict, so you're back to storming. Right? So don't feel that you're going to go for these from 1, 2, 3, 4 in linear order. So forming, it's the motivation to join groups. So think about reasons why you join groups. So why do you want to be part of something bigger than yourself? Right? Do you have a need to belong? Is there some kind of interpersonal attraction? Is there something that the group activities that you really want to do? The group goal is really important to you. It helps you establish some kind of identity. And it fulfills maybe some unrelated needs that you had that you didn't think about that much. Right? So think about why you're part of a team. Why are you in college? Why are you maybe on an athletic team? Why do you volunteer at your church? Why do you get involved maybe in a political campaign? Or you start a club here on campus? Right? There are reasons for forming groups, and they're really important. And a lot of those are personal reasons. Second, then we're going to talk about storming, or the tension building area. This is where you're going to have some conflict, and you're going to have to resolve some conflict. So we talk about primary tension and secondary tension. Right? When there's primary tension, people are sort of walking on eggshells, if you've heard that phrase before. You kind of don't want to step on anybody's toes. Another bad metaphor, talk about walking on eggshells. Right? But think about sort of how you sort of are cautious and kind of keeping quiet, and sort of that primary tension that develops in a group when you're sort of trying to feel each other out a bit. And then there's secondary tension, right? And this is kind of important. It can be positive. People are sort of asserting themselves, becoming different roles, taking on different responsibilities. This becomes really important in a group. And if you can really make it productive if you manage it effectively. Right? And think about tolerating disagreement. We're going to talk about group roles in a couple chapters after this. Right? One of the group roles is central negative, or the devil's advocate. So you want someone in the group to question you and sort of call you out a little bit and say, hey, are we sure we want to go and proceed this way? Right? If you don't do that, we'll talk about groupthink later, but everyone also has the same opinion in groupthink, and you make bad decisions. So if someone's not there to say, hold on, let's look at some of the other alternatives. Right? Keep it civil. Again, these are 3 projects in class. These are not life or death kind of things. Don't make it personal. Stick to the task. Be social. Be proactive, but be polite. Right? You want to really listen. So one of the reasons you go into small groups is because you can actively listen to people. Right? So people can speak their mind, and you can listen to them. You have time and space to do that. And once in a while, use some humor to break up things, because there's going to be some conflict, there's going to be some tension in there, and humor is oftentimes a good way to do it. Just make sure it's very politically correct humor. Don't be telling dirty jokes or any kind of ethnic jokes. That's not going to cut it, and you're just going to make things worse. The norming stage is when you sort of feel that you're part of a team, where you become us and we rather than you or me. Think about the explicit norms that identify acceptable behavior. So if you're meeting on Zoom, make sure everyone's microphone's on, or you can see everybody. You're going to set up some kind of rules and regulations and procedures to follow, right? And people are going to sort of then inhabit those roles in terms of their behavior and attitude, right? I've exposed and sort of imposed on you some outside norming, right? Everyone in the group earns the same grade. You have to work together. You need to produce these items, these tasks, and complete these tasks. So these are externally influenced norms that I'm forcing on you. Right? There could be someone in your group who's going to take a leadership role or a lieutenant role, or someone's going to be really great at information and providing resources. There's going to be somebody who's really good at communicating all these ideas and jotting them down and putting them together. So you're going to have to find each other's strengths and weaknesses during this kind of norming stage. And the group itself is going to have some kind of roles and responsibilities that's going to form as a sort of organic from within. All of a sudden you're going to know that every Tuesday we're going to meet and talk about this, or we're going to do a Zoom call, or we're going to do a group text. So you're going to figure out some ways of norming this group. The last slide then is output, or performing. This is the task completion, where you're actually going to sort of present your final report, your final podcast or children's book, or the answers to the test questions about 12 Angry Men. Right? The idea of a collective effort model. This is what you really want to sort of strive for, where all the members of the group perform well because their individual efforts help you obtain your results. You're all bringing different strengths and weaknesses to this group. So some of you may be really good at technology, and so you may take a big role in performing that, recording the podcast and putting it together, or creating the children's book. Others of you are better at doing research. Some of you might be better at writing and being more creative. So you're going to find each other's strengths and weaknesses, and hopefully that collective effort model will come through. Right? We talked a little about bad apples earlier. Social loafing is sort of a bad apple kind of thing, where a group member expresses and expends less effort as part of the group setting. Your group should be small enough that social loafing is going to be pretty obvious if it happens, but you want to sort of have that person, if they're going to be loafing around, giving them something to do that's meaningful, that'll get them sort of to stop loafing. Right? Establish some kind of group responsibilities. I've already sort of put one of those norms on you where everyone earns the same grade. So that could help or hurt depending on the person. You're going to get it done anyway, so I don't have to participate because I'm going to get the same grade no matter what. Hopefully that's not going to happen. Recognize that person's effort when they do something. So sometimes you may have to sort of single them out and say, hey, that was really a good job you did. Thank you for contributing. Right? Hold everyone accountable. You may have to call that person out. So we talked about confronting or separating earlier. We talked about bad apples. Think about accountability. How you can hold these people accountable. And finally, sort of, again, the nuclear option, confront, kick out, or sidestep the loafer. You probably can't kick the person out because we're all part of the same team here. Again, you might need to confront them, or sometimes you may just have to work around them. And that happens in all groups. I've been in groups for most of my life, from jobs to social groups, and sometimes there's just somebody who just loafs and doesn't do anything, and you just got to work around them. So good luck with everything. I'll talk to you again for the next chapters and for the next projects.